Let me talk to the people who gave everything they had and still got left empty. To the ones who poured out their heart and when they turned around, there was nothing left for themselves. See, I know what it's like to care so much about someone that you forget to care for you. I know how it feels to make them your world and suddenly realize you don't even recognize your reflection anymore. You were so busy loving them, you forgot to love you. You kept showing up for them and no one was showing up for you. You started lowering your standards, shrinking your voice, changing your dreams and silencing your needs just to make them comfortable. You stopped speaking your truth because you didn't want to upset them. You stopped asking for what you needed because you didn't want to seem too much. You started apologizing for simply wanting to be loved the way you loved. But listen to me, you should never have to lose yourself to keep somebody else. The right people will love you for who you are, not who you become to make them stay. You spent so much time trying to fit into their life that you stepped out of your own. You became so focused on being their answer that you stopped asking your own questions. You forgot what made you laugh. You forgot what gave you peace. You forgot you. But I'm here to tell you, you can come back, you can stand back up, you can remember who you are. It's not too late to turn around and choose yourself again. They didn't leave you empty, you gave it all away, and if you gave it away, you can take it back. Piece by piece, step by step, day by day. Stop begging people to love you when you haven't even learned how to love yourself. Stop chasing people who keep walking away. When you haven't even stood still long enough to find you, your heart is too valuable to be placed in careless hands. Your worth isn't determined by how much you can endure or how small you can make yourself to fit in someone else's life. You are not too much, you are enough. And the love you were willing to give them, give it to you, every bit of it, every ounce, every heartbeat. You didn't lose them, you lost yourself trying to love them. And now, it's time to come home, back to you, back to your peace, back to your power, because you are still here and you are still worthy of a love that never asks you to leave yourself behind. Loving someone should never mean losing yourself. Love, in its purest form, should be a force that lifts you higher, not one that drags you away from who you are. It's supposed to add to your life, not take away from it. But somewhere along the way, many of us get it twisted. We believe that loving someone deeply means giving them everything we have, every piece of ourselves, until there's nothing left. We stretch ourselves thin trying to be what they need, trying to fulfill their expectations, and trying to hold on to them, even if it means letting go of the person we used to be. That's not love. That's sacrifice. And while love does require sacrifice at times, it should never demand that you sacrifice yourself. It starts slowly. At first, you compromise on the little things. You change your schedule to match theirs. You stop doing the things that bring you peace because they don't like them. You stay silent when something hurts you because you don't want to push them away. You tell yourself it's love, that this is what loving someone looks like, that it's normal to bend and adjust because relationships are about give and take. But what happens when you're the only one giving? What happens when you keep bending until you break? That's when love crosses the line into something else. That's when you realize you're not in love. You lost. You stop recognizing yourself in the mirror. You smile, but it's forced. You laugh, but there's an emptiness behind it. You say you're fine, but deep down, you know something's wrong. You've dimmed your light so someone else can shine. You've become smaller so they can feel big. You've quieted your voice so theirs can be louder. And every time you do it, a piece of you disappears. The dreams you once had, gone. The things that made you happy, forgotten. The self-respect and boundaries you once stood firm on, washed away in the name of love. But loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. You don't have to erase who you are to make space for somebody else. The right love will never ask you to hide your truth or bury your soul. It won't make you feel like you're too much or not enough. It won't punish you for having needs, opinions, and emotions. If you have to make yourself smaller to fit into someone's life, then their life was never built to hold someone like you in the first place. Real love is freedom. It gives you room to grow. It celebrates who you are and challenges you to be even better. Not for them, but for you. Real love sees you clearly. It doesn't ask you to change the things that make you who you are. It embraces them. It doesn't dim your light because it's intimidated by your shine. It stands beside you, proud to walk next to someone who knows their worth. But it's hard. It's hard to see clearly when you're caught up in the feeling of loving someone who makes you believe you have to work for their affection. It's easy to lose sight of your own value when you're busy chasing their approval. You start thinking love has to be earned by how much you can tolerate, how quiet you can be, and how much of yourself you're willing to give up. But that's not love, that's control, that's dependency, that's fear. And fear and love can't live in the same house. You are not meant to disappear in love. You're supposed to be seen, heard, valued, and respected. You are supposed to bring all of who you are to the table, knowing that it's enough. You are supposed to stand tall in your truth, knowing that the right person will never ask you to lower your standards or compromise your self-worth just to keep them close. Sometimes we think if we love them hard enough, they'll change. If we give more, they'll finally see our worth. If we stay quiet and keep the peace, they'll realize we're what they've been searching for. But you should never have to beg to be loved right. You should never have to fight to be treated with basic respect. The person who is meant for you will meet you where you are. They will see your light and not try to put it out. They will hear your voice and listen to what it says. They will honor your boundaries and never make you feel guilty for having them. Loving someone should be a partnership, not a surrender. It should be mutual, not one-sided. It should fill you up, not drain you. You are allowed to love deeply, but never at the cost of losing yourself. You are allowed to care, but not to the point where you stop caring about you. The love you give to someone else should never be greater than the love you give to yourself. It's okay to walk away from something that makes you forget who you are. It's okay to say, this isn't love, if it's costing me myself. It's okay to start over, to choose you, and to find peace in standing alone rather than feeling lonely beside someone who doesn't truly see you. You deserve a love that doesn't ask you to lose yourself just to keep it. And that love starts with you remembering your worth, standing in your truth, and refusing to shrink for anyone ever again. There's a danger in becoming what someone else needs while forgetting who you are. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow, quiet process. You don't even realize it's happening until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. At first, it seems harmless, adjusting yourself to fit into their world, compromising to keep the peace, changing little things because you think that's what love is supposed to look like. You tell yourself it's about being flexible, about being supportive, about being a good partner. But with each small change, you lose a piece of yourself. And without those pieces, you start to lose your identity. In the beginning, you want to make them happy. You want to be there for them, to be someone they can depend on. So you start making little sacrifices. You stop doing things you enjoy because they don't share the same interests. You hold back your opinions because you're afraid they won't agree with them. You hide your feelings because you don't want to be seen as too emotional, too sensitive, too complicated. You become quieter, smaller, easier to manage. And little by little, you drift away from the things that once made you who you are. You change the way you dress because you think it'll make them like you more. You laugh at jokes that don't feel funny because you don't want to seem uptight. You agree with ideas that don't sit right with you because you're scared of confrontation. You become an expert at avoiding anything that might make them uncomfortable, even if it means becoming uncomfortable yourself. And before you know it, you're living in a version of yourself that's been edited, censored, and watered down just to fit into their idea of who they want you to be. The danger is real. When you spend so much time being what someone else needs, you eventually forget what you need. You forget what you love. You forget what makes you happy, what makes you feel alive. You stop asking yourself the important questions because you're too busy answering theirs. Your life becomes about meeting their expectations, fulfilling their desires, and making sure they're okay, while you slowly fade into the background of your own story. At first, you convince yourself it's worth it. You tell yourself that love requires compromise, and it does. But love should never require you to disappear. You believe that being everything for them will make them stay, that if you just give enough, love enough, sacrifice enough, they'll appreciate you more. But it doesn't work that way. What often happens is they come to expect that version of you, the one who bends, the one who sacrifices, the one who gives everything and asks for nothing. And in the process, they stop seeing your true self because you stopped showing it to them a long time ago. You might start to feel resentment building inside you. Quiet at first, then louder. You feel it when you say yes to something you don't want to do. You feel it when you keep your mouth shut about something that matters to you. You feel it when you pretend to be okay, even though you're not. That resentment grows because deep down, you know you've traded authenticity for acceptance. You've given up pieces of yourself for the comfort of someone else. And no matter how much you give, it never seems to be enough to make them love you the way you want to be loved. It's exhausting. Carrying the weight of someone else's needs while ignoring your own will drain the life out of you. You find yourself constantly tired, emotionally worn out, and feeling alone, even when they're right there next to you. Because you know, deep down, they're not loving the real you. They're loving the version of you that you created to keep them close. And that realization is painful. It cuts deep. Because you realize you're not being chosen for who you truly are. You're being chosen for who you've pretended to be. It's a dangerous place to live, constantly adjusting yourself for the sake of someone else's comfort. You lose your boundaries, you lose your voice, you lose your sense of direction. You might even lose your faith in love, because love starts to feel like a game you can never win. But the truth is, love isn't supposed to feel like that. Real love sees you, all of you. It embraces your truth. It doesn't ask you to change into something you're not. It doesn't make you feel like you have to earn it by becoming someone else. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. You don't have to become anyone else to be loved right. You don't have to silence yourself, shrink yourself, or reshape yourself to fit into someone else's life. You were never meant to be someone's project, something they mold to their liking. You were meant to stand in your own power, to be loved for who you truly are without apology. But it starts with you. You have to remember who you are. You have to stop betraying yourself for temporary acceptance. You have to stop trading your authenticity for approval. The right person will not be threatened by your truth. They won't be uncomfortable with your boundaries. They won't ask you to stop being you. And until you find someone who can meet you there, you have to be willing to stand in that truth alone. Becoming what they need might make them stay, but it won't make you happy. Forgetting who you are might keep the peace, but it will rob you of your purpose, and no relationship is worth losing yourself over. You are not here to play a role in someone else's life. You are here to live your own life fully, authentically, and unapologetically. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you accept, and what you stand up for. Every time you stay silent when someone crosses a boundary, you send a message that it's okay. Every time you tolerate disrespect, even in small ways, you're setting a standard. You're showing people what you will and won't put up with, whether you realize it or not. People take their cues from you. They pay attention to your reactions. And the truth is, people will often treat you in the way you tell them it's acceptable to treat you. It starts with small things. Someone makes a comment that doesn't sit right with you, but you laugh it off because you don't want to seem sensitive. Someone shows up late repeatedly, but you brush it off because you don't want to appear difficult. Someone makes a habit of dismissing your feelings, and instead of speaking up, you swallow it because you're afraid of confrontation. But those little moments add up. What you tolerate becomes the rule. What you stay quiet about becomes permission. We all want to be liked. We want to keep the peace. We want to avoid conflict. But peace at the expense of self-respect isn't peace at all. It's quiet suffering. It's self-betrayal. And after a while, that weight gets heavy. Because deep down, you know you're not living in alignment with your worth. You know you're teaching people that your boundaries can be ignored, your feelings don't matter, and your time is invaluable. People don't automatically know how to treat you. They learn based on how you treat yourself and how you respond when they push the line. If you constantly put yourself last, others will do the same. If you don't speak up for yourself, others will assume your silence is consent. If you don't require respect, people will assume they don't need to give it. You have to set the tone. You have to draw the line and stand firm on it. That doesn't mean you have to be harsh or confrontational, but you do have to be clear. You have to show people what is and isn't acceptable in your life. That clarity makes people respect you. It makes them think twice before taking advantage of your kindness. Boundaries don't push people away. They filter the ones who were never meant to be close in the first place. It's not about control. It's not about trying to make people act a certain way. It's about self-respect. It's about honoring your worth enough to create an environment where you feel valued and safe. Some people won't like it when you start setting boundaries. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're difficult. That's fine. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You're here to be true to yourself. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. Saying no when you've always said yes. Speaking up when you're used to staying silent. Walking away from situations where you're not valued. It's hard, but every time you stand up for yourself, you teach people how to treat you. You show them you are not someone who will be walked over. You show them you have standards, and those standards are not negotiable. You are allowed to demand respect without apology. You are allowed to expect honesty, loyalty, and kindness. You are allowed to remove yourself from any space where those things are lacking. You don't have to explain or justify why you won't accept less than you deserve. The fact that you exist is reason enough. The way you treat yourself sets the bar. If you talk to yourself with kindness and respect, others will see that and follow suit. If you care for yourself, protect your peace, and hold yourself to a high standard, you attract people who do the same. If you believe in your worth, others will believe in it too. But if you constantly put yourself down, allow yourself to be treated poorly, and tolerate disrespect, others will take that as their cue. You teach people by example. You can't control their behavior, but you can control your response. You can control who has access to you. You can control how much energy you give to people who don't honor you. And when people realize you're not afraid to walk away, they begin to treat you differently. They understand that you're not desperate for validation. You're not desperate for love at any cost. You know who you are, you know what you bring to the table, and if they can't meet you there, you're not afraid to leave the table entirely. It's not about being better than anyone, it's about knowing you're worthy of respect and love just like everyone else. It's about knowing that what you allow continues, and sometimes the hardest thing to do is to change what you've allowed for so long. But once you do, everything shifts. The energy changes. The people in your life change. Some will step up and others will step out. Both are gifts. Both are lessons. At the end of the day, you are responsible for how you are treated. Not because it's your fault when people are cruel or disrespectful, but because it's your responsibility to protect yourself from environments and relationships that harm you. You can't change people, but you can change what you tolerate. And when you change what you tolerate, you change your life. Healing begins when you choose yourself again. When you finally get tired of being tired. When you've given so much of yourself away that there's barely anything left, and you realize that no one is coming to save you but you. Healing starts the moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix what they broke, to apologize for what they did, or to love you the way you always deserve to be loved. It begins when you make the decision to pick yourself up off the floor and start putting your own pieces back together, no matter how long it takes or how heavy it feels. For so long, you might have put everyone else first. You made their happiness your mission. Their needs became your responsibilities. You showed up for them when they wouldn't do the same for you. You fought for them, defended them, forgave them, even when they didn't deserve it. You tried to be everything they needed, even when it cost you parts of yourself you'll never get back. But somewhere along the line, you forgot that you mattered too. You forgot that you were worthy of the same effort and love you so freely gave to them. And then comes the quiet moment. The moment when you realize you can't do it anymore. The moment when you look in the mirror and see someone who's been carrying too much for too long. Someone who's been shrinking, bending, sacrificing, and losing themselves in the name of love, loyalty, or obligation. That moment when you hear your own voice whispering, enough. That is the moment healing begins. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you didn't love them. It doesn't mean you're selfish or that you gave up too soon. It means you've finally realized that your well-being matters. It means you've woken up to the fact that you've spent too much time ignoring your own needs and silencing your own voice. It means you're ready to stop pouring into people who never poured back. You're ready to stop showing up for those who always found a reason not to show up for you. And you're ready to stop waiting for them to give you the love you've always deserved but never received. When you choose yourself again, you take back your power. You reclaim your time, your energy, your peace. You stop settling for half-hearted efforts and broken promises. You stop tolerating people who only love you when it's convenient for them. You stop accepting apologies with no action, excuses with no accountability, and relationships that leave you feeling more empty than full. You draw a line in the sand and say, no more. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and lonely. It's the tears you cry in the middle of the night when no one is watching. It's the deep breaths you take just to get through the day. It's learning to be okay in your own company, learning to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. It's choosing to wake up every morning and keep going, even when it feels easier to stay in bed. But day by day, little by little, you start to feel lighter, you start to feel stronger. When you choose yourself, you start doing things that bring you peace. You rediscover the things that make you happy, the things that make you feel alive. Maybe it's taking long walks alone, reading books you never made time for, or listening to music that reminds you of who you were before the world told you who you had to be. Maybe it's cutting ties with toxic people, or maybe it's setting boundaries for the first time in your life and holding them, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. You realize that healing isn't about getting back to who you were before they hurt you. It's about becoming someone new, someone wiser, someone stronger, someone who loves themselves enough to never let it happen again. You learn to forgive yourself for the times you stayed too long, for the times you lost yourself trying to hold on to someone else. You stop blaming yourself for their choices. You stop carrying shame that doesn't belong to you. Choosing yourself again doesn't mean you have to do it all at once. Some days you'll make progress, other days you feel like you're right back where you started. That's okay. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, it's hard, but it's worth it. Every time you say yes to yourself, whether it's walking away, speaking up, or simply resting, you are healing. Every time you remind yourself that you are enough, just as you are healing. You teach yourself to trust again, to hope again, to believe in love again. But this time, you know that the most important love is the love you give yourself. You realize you don't have to wait for anyone to choose you because you've already made that choice for yourself. You become your own safe space, your own home. And that is where the true healing begins. Not when someone else makes amends, not when they finally realize what they lost, but when you decide that you are worth choosing, worth loving, and worth fighting for. By you.